Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life here in Gwinnett County. Beautiful day, although it started out freezing this morning, but we're up to about 62 right now. Um, we're here with a candidate that's running for re-election, Ruwa Romman. Hey, Ruwa, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Ruwa is running for Georgia State Rep House District 97. Actually, she's running for re-election. She's been in the
Mhm.
term for one term, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And so it's time for a re-election, right?
hmm
Um, she represents the area that she represents is Peachtree Corners, Berkeley Lake, Duluth. That's about
Yeah,
those
so
three
it's
cities mainly, right?
yeah, it's four. So it's Berkeley Lake, Duluth, Norcross, and Peachtree
Norcross.
Corners.
There you go. And if as far as Peachtree Corners goes, about a little bit more than half the city,
Yep.
I believe, if it looks right.
Yeah.
Um, So we're gonna hop right into this. We've interviewed her, the person running against her, Michael Corbin, a week or two ago. So he's out there, so you can listen to that interview if you like. Find it out on our website. So this one we're gonna be discussing a few issues we may not have touched upon with Michael Corbin. One of them is the constitutional amendments that
Yeah.
are up coming in this actually that's going to be on the ballot this November. So, and you all should be aware of it. So, one of them, the biggest one, we'll start off with, to me, is the biggest one because I'm a
Yep.
homeowner, so I can be a little selfish.
Yeah.
Is a statewide exemption to local homestead tax.
Yep.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the, in brief, what that means to a homeowner here in Peachtree Corners?
Absolutely. So what it does is it puts a cap on how much home assessments can go up by about 3% per year. So what it's doing is it's essentially limiting the increases to property taxes.
Mhm.
The cons, however, is that it's kind of multifold, right? When we were working during session, we knew that housing costs were a big problem and we really wanted to reduce those costs. But what ended up happening is that we passed a bunch of referendums, including the Gwinnett one that we recently got passed. This is one of the other ones that got passed. So I'd originally voted yes for it. I'll be voting no for it at the ballot box specifically because when you are adding on so many exemptions, one on top of the other, very quickly, it can become very disruptive, particularly for local municipalities. So, what do I mean by that? If a city or county's funding is disrupted too quickly, suddenly you'll start to see even like slower responses to things like potholes, streetlights being off, school funding, you name it. So, what we're trying to do, at least for me personally, with my vote, is that I'm trying to strike a balance between not shocking our municipalities too much. And then shifting the burden onto our cities and our counties. I just don't think that's fair with the way that the bill is going to end up working out because we already passed a Gwinnett Homestead exemption.
So, what is the Okay, so if I look at my property tax, right, the
hmm
way it works is that an assessment is made. Most people will know this, right? So
Exactly.
it's usually it's 40% of your market, quote, market value of the home,
Yep. Yep.
um, which means that the county or the municipality doesn't have to increase your millage rate, but in effect, because of the appraisal, um, your property tax can go up.
Exactly.
So nothing's voted on, just the appraisal's done, and your property tax could be 20% higher. I mean,
hmm
my property tax essentially was, I won't say 20% higher, but it was probably 12, 13% higher
Yeah.
due to COVID, right?
Yep.
Because it was assessed and it went up, and they don't assess every year. I mean, they do, but it doesn't always change every year. Um, so I think we've gone through that struggle where we're gonna, I don't foresee a 12% increase again.
Yeah. No, no, no. And we've already increased your homestead exemption. So all of this, the reason I'm worried about this bill in particular is it
Yeah.
sets a statewide standard, but the
Mhm.
problem is municipalities and counties are very different. And my worry is that, as an example of Peachtree Corners, say um, they've decreased your tax bill, which people should have seen at least either their taxes not go up this year or go up by only a much smaller margin. Some people actually saw a decrease in their tax assessments this year. Um, but the hope is that with the Gwinnett one specifically, it is tailored to Gwinnett residents. The problem with this bill is it creates sort of a weird opt out mechanism that can create some problems for municipalities and counties that I'm worried about. So it's more of a logistics thing. And what I tell people is that when it comes to constitutional amendments, if you have a concern, it's actually okay to vote no, because it's easier to get it back on the ballot next time around than it is to take it off or revoke it.
Okay. So, but the next time around would be 2 years from now if it goes through the process.
We can
right?
decide. We can actually do anytime. So the Gwinnett Homestead exemption
Okay.
was immediately put on the ballot immediately during the primaries.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So, in your opinion, this cap of 3% would wreak havoc possibly with our county, or you're talking about statewide with a variety of counties assisted cities.
Generically, and we've seen this in California as well, where it has increased things like homelessness, had been very, very disruptive. A lot of times when people talk about, I don't like to dunk on California, but when I was doing research on this, and that's why we actually did our guide a little later, is I was doing research on how this has worked in other states. And what we found is when you do this kind of a statewide mechanism or whatever the case may be, you end up seeing all of these unintended consequences down the road that you didn't really expect, right? You had good intentions, you want to lower costs, which is great. But my recommendation to people is do it by county or municipality instead, because then you're able to tailor it for your specific district or location. The other thing I will say is that this referendum in particular did not have a fiscal note. So we don't actually know how this would impact even statewide revenue related matters. So say, for example, there is a small business program that has been vital in bringing small businesses to Gwinnett County or Peachtree Corners, whatever the case may be. We could inadvertently defund that program and then lose out on that tax revenue for the city. And then you start to see services go down in quality over time. So for me, the fact that I don't know how much this is going to cost us, I don't know how much this will be disruptive on top of the Gwinnett one that we've already passed, gave me pause. And that's why I switched from yes to a no.
Okay. And people can appeal their assessment. So, I mean, it's not like they can't go out and appeal it. And what you're saying is really to keep it local. It's almost like a Republican thing, right? Keep the power local versus.
Oh, I'm a big local. Yeah, I'm a big local person fan. So.
Right. So keep it local. If we don't like what's happening at the county level, I know in Peachtree Corners there is no millage rate, but at the county level, obviously there is. So if you have a problem there, you can either appeal your assessment or listen, just vote the county commissioner out. That's like voting these things in like this.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So let's move on to tax court in the judicial system and what that means in brief.
Yeah, so I am going to be voting yes on this one because I think that we need to remove tax cases from your general queue. I would much rather that a case where somebody is waiting for their case to be adjudicated to not have their life hang in limbo because of a tax case that's taking up a lot of time. The other thing is that tax cases require a lot of expertise that not every judge might have. And the hope is it would relieve the burden on the criminal justice system as well. Now, some of the cons on that one is obviously that means that, the governor gets to appoint those judges, not us as people. We don't get to vote for them. So less oversight. The other one that people had mentioned to me recently is that if you have a tax case, it might be a little more burdensome or costly if you're low income. But for me, I really think that we should just kind of take those because there's such a niche type of law that, take it out of the generic queue and put it in its own queue because then, businesses can kind of deal with their own stuff and not take up the court's time. But again, per usual, if you have concerns with it, vote no and let's fix it.
Right. So just is there, I'm sure there's statistics about who is in the tax courts, not tax courts, but how many people, what the demographics are, like, is it majority business people that are going to these? Okay. So
it's majority businesses. But, with everything that happens with systems, you're always going to have a small group of people that could be negatively impacted.
Right.
Unfortunately, we don't actually have that much research on it. I wish we did, but we do know that when it comes to businesses, they do want to be able to finish their cases sooner rather than later.
Sure.
And this would be an opportunity to do that. But again, as I always say, when it comes to constitutional amendments, if you have concerns, err on the side of no. I just think in this case, the positives outweigh the negatives, but I totally understand if people think the opposite.
Okay. Referendum A, not 1, 2, but A, is tax exemption for tangible personal property.
Yeah. So I voted no on this one and will during session, and we'll be voting no on this one at the ballot box. There's a few reasons for this. One, we don't actually fully describe what we mean by tangible property is the term that is being used for this specific amendment. It's basically tax exemption for certain types of tangible personal property. We kind of define it, we kind of don't. There's a lot of room for people to take advantage. So somebody could be take this tax exemption. And what it does, it actually raises the exemption from 7,000 to 20,000, and just a lot of room for misuse. And the intention was to help businesses, but the reality of the situation is that it would mostly help larger companies and corporations and could actually inadvertently hurt small businesses, because the way that small businesses do their taxes, I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to benefit from this as much, and could actually be hurt because, again, we have a lot of programs that support small businesses, and this might be taking away from that support.
So I read something online about this particular piece just recently, and I agree with you. It was vague. I mean, it didn't say exactly what it was, but it did say along the lines, it gave an example, for example. So maybe it's a bad example, but what they gave is, let's say you buy computer system. It's a $5,000 system. You're paying sales tax on it. The tangible personal or the tangible property tax, I guess, you have to pay an additional tax on that equipment, if I understand correctly. And this would...
and it depends on how you're using it too. So it depends on the usage. It depends on what it's generating. It depends on the equipment and how it's used in your business. So and that's why I'm saying it's so vague that what you're bringing up makes total sense. You're like, okay, you've already paid taxes on it once. Right. Why are you paying taxes on it again? If you're using it for your business? The problem is that the way that taxes get itemized, the concern is that there is going to be a lot of ability to misuse this, and it would cause a decrease in revenue, and we would take away programs that actually help small businesses to succeed. And the next thing you know, these larger corporations are benefiting in a way that was supposed to help you as a small business owner, but actually ends up hurting you in the long run.
So, but the larger businesses, I mean, this is a maximum of 20,000, right? A larger business, 20,000 is like a drop in a bucket, or is it per?
It depends. Okay. Again, it totally depends on how it's set up. And that's what I'm saying. It's this specific referendum was written in such a way that I voted for it no on the House floor, and we'll be voting for it no again because it was kind of rammed through. There was no, and I need to quadruple check this, but I looked for a fiscal note. I couldn't really find one that would tell me how much this would cost or the impact it would have on our state. For me, I can't even tell you to make a decision on this appropriately because I can't even give you adequate numbers to say, yeah, it's only 20,000, not a big deal, drop in the bucket for a large business, but a big deal for a smaller business. But I don't even know if that smaller business could even qualify or what hoops they have to run through or what items count kind of thing. And on top of that, I don't even know how much it would cost us in the long run to be able to give you like a yes recommendation.
Okay. All right. Then let's see. So if anyone wants to find out about this particular referendum, I mean, any of these three, they can go. Yeah. I'll have links in the show notes, but it should be easy enough to find where they are.
Yeah, so we have put up a voter guide on all of our social media channels. I got to just finish it on Facebook, but right now it's on Instagram. Okay. Actually, no, it's everywhere. It's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, wherever you get your information. We posted the entire guide for everybody to be able to access. And it goes through the pros and cons of each one. I also go through how I voted for it during session and how I'll be voting for it at the ballot box and why. Because I do believe in that transparency, right? Like you can disagree with me on, hey, we need to lower these taxes at all costs possible. I'm like, cool, totally, no problem. I just never want people to question what their elected official is doing and why.
No, and I appreciate that transparency. So even if you changed your vote and you decided to vote yes or no, it's good to know why you changed that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move away from that a little bit. There's another referendum coming up just for Gwinnett County, and that's the transit referendum.
Yep.
Um, Traffic and infrastructure concerns here in Peachtree Corners. I mean, we're mainly a car city, if you
Yep.
will. And the autonomous vehicle technology park thing just drives that. It almost feels like Michigan sometimes. Um, so how do you think this referendum would address our issues or
Yep.
impact us locally here in Peachtree Corners?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed, for example, is that in my district alone, we have 4 different cities, and 3 of them are downtown centers. So they have festivals, they have events, they have a lot of incredible activities, and it comes with a lot of traffic. And so what I tell people is imagine if you could take a convenient bus to the Fall Festival in Duluth, or for example, to any of the Norcross festivities that happen in addition to the Peachtree Corners festivities, because suddenly you don't have to worry about parking, you don't have to worry about getting stuck in traffic, you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. So this transit referendum specifically would pay for 115 miles of quick ride BRT Light is what it's called. So, and what's really great about BRT Light is that it's almost as fast as a train without needing to build the infrastructure for trains. It would do almost 26 miles of bus routes. It would have nearly 346 miles of county ride services, 20 transit transfer centers, 2 airport connectors, um, and for Peachtree Corner specifically, there is going to be one of those airport connector routes in Peachtree Corners.
Now, this would
And
connect to the Doraville station, or
no,
it doesn't go straight.
these would be correct. These are like express buses. So to give you an example, right now I can drive about 10 minutes to Sugarloaf Mills, and I can
Mhm.
take a bus, and it will take me directly to downtown and only has 4 stops downtown before I get to the Capitol. So on days when I don't have late evening events at the Capitol during session, I will
Mhm.
literally take the bus and spend that hour that I would have spent in traffic responding to emails or getting work done or doing calls or whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
and I'll be in the HOV lane. And it's incredibly, I mean, I'm kind of skeptical about buses, to be honest with you, but I
Mhm.
decided to try it, and I was very pleasantly surprised. It's a clean bus, has Wi-Fi, is full every single time I've taken it, to the point that they've now had to run buses every 5 minutes during rush hour because the buses will overfill and people will have to go on to the next one. So it would
Mhm.
be similar to that kind of an experience. Think of like a charter bus with the nice seats and the, cushions and things like
Sure.
that. Um, and the hope is to build that out for the entire county. Now, it's going to be a 30-year project because infrastructure takes time to build, but it starts with the most dense areas such as Lawrenceville and works its way out. So over time, what you'll see a decrease in traffic because there's less cars on the road. Instead of having 40 cars, it's going to be
Mhm.
just one bus. And I don't know if any, for the listeners who have
Well,
to commute, it just gets
right.
so awful.
It's interesting because with remote work now and hybrid work still being in place, I mean,
Yep.
it's not. I don't think that's going to go anywhere.
Hmm.
If anything, it just be more hybrid rather than just dedicated
Yeah.
remotely working. But coming from New York, I mean, and having lived here since '95, I can see there's good reasons in my mind. Like there's the Long Island Railroad, there's other rail systems or even express bus systems that are coach seats and stuff that work really well. You paid a premium for that above
Yeah.
the normal bus payment, and they were clean and they were safe and stuff. Different than the train system, at least
Hmm.
in New York at the time. Um, and even here, sometimes you hear things happening on MARTA. MARTA's not always the safest or the best that it can be,
Yeah.
just because of the nature of the beast, I guess. But
Yep.
I can see why there would be some resistance to this a little bit with regard to spending the amount of money that's going to be. What's the total cost like over the period of time for this referendum?
It's a 1% levied. I gotta double check the numbers,
Right.
but
It's a one penny tax actually
yep,
is what it
yep,
is. It's a
yep,
one penny tax
yep,
on your sales tax. So it'd be adding one more penny to
yeah,
any Gwinnett sales tax, right?
yeah.
And so over time, we're talking billions of dollars being
Yeah.
raised to be used. Um, and it's, like you said, it's not really a train system. It's not bringing, it's not spending, $1 billion to do 2 miles of track or something.
No. This is
Ridiculous amount.
like the way I've explained it to people is that it's like the biggest bang for your buck, right? We don't have the density to justify train. And
No.
this is Gwinnett, this is like by Gwinnett for Gwinnett kind of a program that focuses on only Gwinnett. Obviously it's trying to also, connect people to other transit systems in the area. But if in our guide, there's actually a map that will show you where it's going to be a county ride, what's called a quick ride, and actually Peachtree Corners, Norcross are both on the quick ride route. The county ride will include all of, Peachtree Corners, Duluth, Norcross, and Berkeley Lake.
Right.
You have the airport ride also connects into Peachtree Corners. There's going to, one of the
And
transit.
when you
Yes.
say airport, right, that goes straight to the airport
Correct. So there's
from
going
the
to be
county,
what's
right?
called transit, like little 20 new transit stations. One of
Mhm.
them is going to be in Peachtree Corners. The other one's going to be in Norcross, and the third one's going to be in Duluth. So all of these downtown centers where we have a lot of people,
Right.
you'll actually be able to access at least one, and up to four. So county ride, quick ride, rapid ride, and airport ride
Mhm.
along these transfer stations and facilities. So one of them
Okay.
is going to be here in Peachtree Corners.
Okay, so if I wanted to go to the airport, what I'm getting at is
Yep.
I could go to that hub. I could be
Yep.
dropped off here in Peachtree Corners, pick up
Yep.
the bus,
Yep.
and it takes you with some stops along the way. Maybe it'll take you all the way to the airport. There's no jumping off, getting onto a different system to get to the airport. It's
It'll be
going.
the same system. Based on this map, there might be a
Mhm.
transfer to the airport line, but you can also just park and ride. So you can just park your car, which is what I do with the Gwinnett one. And I'm trying to see like it's called Hartsfield Jackson Ride, and I'm actually trying to open it up a
So
little
the
bit.
one from Gwinnett County or from
Yep,
Peachtree Corners or these micro hubs
there's two
won't
of them.
take you directly to the airport. You would still have to make a transfer somewhere
Yes,
to
or
get
drive
to
your
the
car
airport.
directly to there, right.
Okay,
Or, based on I'm reading the map as we're talking right now because I don't have it
sure.
memorized, but they're, 'cause it's a quick ride or a county ride that
Hmm.
you can either take that to connect you to the airport express bus because they don't wanna do any stops. They want somebody to be able to get on the bus and go directly to the airport, or you can I'm trying to find where the hub
So
is for.
okay, so you can go there. So that's my point, because
Yep,
originally some of these things were you get on it, you get to, let's say, the MARTA station, you hop on there, and then you get to the airport, right?
yep,
But what I'm hearing is that if you're hopping on at a Peachtree Corners hub or Duluth or where at Norcross, that you go directly from here to the
yep,
airport without
yep,
making any jumps anywhere.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
So I
Yep,
mean that I find that more convenient than
yep,
having to stop somewhere, get
yeah.
off, walk, get another transfer, wait for that. Okay, so it's straight
And
up. It's
yeah,
just
so if you have a car, I'm trying to see where the nearest hub is. There's obviously the Indian Trail, like Greyhound one, um, but I can't like the bus route. I'm like looking at the bus route. It starts at Mall of Georgia, goes down to Sugarloaf Mills,
mhm.
goes down to the Gwinnett Transit Center at Gwinnett Place, Indian Trail. I can't fully read what that says. It's like OFS or something like that. It's like right behind Norcross. But that one, any of these are
Mhm.
on the route to Hartsfield Jackson, and you don't have to transfer. You just park, get on the bus, and it'll take you directly to the airport.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, cool. So this way everyone knows some of that. We'll have a link also to that map.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and so this way people can check that out also. There's pros and cons obviously, and we'll try to find those
Yep.
links for people
Yeah.
that want to look at that, because it is a penny that's being added to our sales tax,
Yep.
and it's a commitment that will stay there for quite a few years, I think,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. So
Is
yeah,
there a
because
limit on
remember
that?
when you're building it, it'll be about no more than 30 years.
Okay.
And the reason for it is that when you're building this kind of infrastructure, whether it's ordering buses or one of the things they're going to do is these buses are going to have the traffic, like they're going to coordinate with the traffic system. So if you're
Hmm.
on a bus, it'll always be a green light. You don't have to stop at traffic lights. You don't have to get caught in that traffic. Some of them will actually have their own lane, so they have to like designate some of the lanes for rapid transit bus as well. So a lot of that, again, going back to the biggest bang for your buck, you're not laying down tracks. You're not trying to rebuild stuff. It's actually more technology based.
Right.
And the other cool thing is that for some of these quick transit ones, they're going to be electric. So you don't have to deal with the fumes of buses, increased exhaust, that kind of thing. But it does take time. So that's why that was one of my cons, is that it'll take time for all of this to be rolled out to the county.
For sure. I mean, there's all sorts of things, legality and public hearings and stuff for these types of things to even set up the hubs, the micro hubs, like in Peachtree Corners. Like, where would that be? I know it's on a map somewhere suggested, but the ultimate place that it would be would take time and public hearings and stuff like that, I guess. But this is different than the last time the transit referendum was on the ballot, because that last time included, I think, a MARTA or several MARTA stops. I think it was at least one. And I think that was to Mall of Georgia.
Yep. Hello.
Yeah.
I love cats.
I got 3 of them. Do you want to take one?
Awesome. I've got 2, so.
Oh, okay, there you go.
But it's great. I will say this. There is very little that I miss about my time in school in DC. But the one thing I do miss is having access to public transportation, because it was just so nice not to have to sit in traffic. I could get so much work done. You could be on your phone, you can relax, you can read. It's just, I don't like traffic, and anything that will make that better would go a long way. And I will say too, Gwinnett is growing very rapidly. And if we don't start this now, we're going to run into a lot of problems in the future, where we're going to see a situation where our infrastructure can't actually handle how many people are coming in. It's not going to be able to handle the businesses that want to come here. It's not going to be able to handle like the kind of growth that would bring better jobs and that would improve our communities and that kind of thing. We end up facing a ceiling, but the problem is people are still coming, and we're going to have, hopefully more families and more kids and that kind of thing. And the sooner we can start prepping our infrastructure for that kind of a demand, the less disruptive it's going to be.
And I agree with you on that. We're seeing more apartments being built, multifamily. People aren't buying as many houses because of the nature of, mortgage rates, and there's less land to build on, and
they're getting priced out by these corporations. It's so infuriating.
Yes, the trend is build to rent. It's just like crazy. The amount of private industry purchasing these homes that you're gonna, even in subdivisions where you're gonna just rent them out to other people.
Yep.
And there's a trend among younger people anyway to rent at this point because they can't do the buying. And we were talking about it during one episode with the city manager about having affordable housing. How do you create that? How can you incentivize that or force that? Because sometimes incentives don't work. You literally have to force certain things. So when there's not enough affordable housing and you have a need for labor, maybe the transit system is certainly one way to do that.
Yep.
Right. So let's move on to. So let's see. We've done the transit. There's feedback. Sorry, the little guy. Little guy likes to chew on wire sometimes.
Great.
Get electrocuted. So there's feedback from the community. I think that would be that you're hearing probably, especially if you're campaigning, going door to door and stuff. So what type of feedback are you getting? Whether it's national thoughts or just local? What are the pressing issues that you're seeing from this district?
Yeah, so my favorite part about campaigning, and for those who don't know, as state representatives, we don't actually get staff, right? So the nice thing about campaign season is it gives us an opportunity to fundraise and get staff and be able to door knock. And I'll go and door knock myself. Well, everyone on the team canvass. It doesn't matter if you're the candidate or if you're brand new. Everyone's doing the work. Right. And what's been really amazing to me is the fact that there are some things that haven't changed, right? People have concerns about fully funding education, the size of classrooms for their kids. How do we retain teachers because teachers are leaving? They're burning out, making sure kids have access to the best educators, taking care of those educators, that kind of thing. But the thing that has gotten we've seen more at the doors over time is actually what we're just talking about, which is housing. Whether that includes HOA oversight. Some people are starting to realize that there are these companies taking over HOA duties and it's causing a lot of problems. One of the things I learned, and again, this is why housing is always harder for state people, because there's so much that happens on a city and county level that is a little more complicated.
Right.
But one thing I learned recently talking to one of our city council members is that companies are coming in and buying single family homes. They're pricing out young families and it's terrible, right?
Sure.
Cities are actually not allowed to have a database to track how many of these homes are up for rent versus being sold to actual families. And there are these laws that we have on the books in Georgia that preempt local ability to actually handle some of this, like, part of the housing crisis.
Yeah, that's true. I heard the same thing, actually.
Yeah. And so, people at the doors will say things like, I wanted to, for example, move or get a larger home, but I can't because we're being priced out everywhere. I'll tell you that there's a house on the corner here that is $200,000 more than when we first bought our house in 2020. And it's only been 4 years. And I don't think it's not, I mean, it's a great home. It's a beautiful home, but I don't think it's worth $500,000. And so you're seeing this, insane, like, housing market. And people keep talking about, well, we just need to build, like, they want us to lower standards in order to be able to build more. But that's just not true. All you're doing is making homes less safe, and you're just letting them pocket the extra part of their profit. So how do we, like you said, is there a way to force it? Is there a way to incentivize it? Is there a way to, I think we use a lot of carrots here in Georgia because we really do care about being the number one place to do business. But the reality is that companies are profit driven. And if there are no consequences to not following the law is just a suggestion at that point.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I was just speaking to someone else here in the city about a particular development that went up. The schematics for it, or the renderings for it, doesn't look, the building itself does not look like the renderings that were given. Because they ended up using slightly different materials and stuff. And so when rezonings are done for, let's say, multifamily and stuff, they, cities, counties, they want to allow, like you said, some room for innovative, creative work, right? But the problem is it is profit driven. And when you have profit driven, profit drives over everything else on that list. And if they can get away with using slightly cheaper materials, or if you say landscape, these got to be, you got to replace all the trees, they'll put in 1-inch radius trees versus 3-inch radius trees. Unless you specifically condition these things, they will not do it. So that is a problem. The database for knowing whether a building's bought, at least privately, like through an LLC or corporation, is out there. It can be found. In fact, there's an interactive map app.
Like, officially, you as a city, you cannot set it up yourself, and I think that's just insane.
Yes, it is, and in fact, I'm looking at actually collecting that data at some point and publishing it, because I believe there's at least 12 to 16% that may be owned privately in the city.
Oh, even worse. In Atlanta, it's 40% of single-family homes are now owned by private corporations.
40%.
They are no longer on the market. They are up for rent. These aren't like people who have 2 homes and renting one out for college kids. These are actual hedge funds who are buying up these portfolio of homes, and sometimes they'll just sit on them and then sell them for a profit, and the next one will sell it for a profit, and suddenly the cost of a home doubles, even though no updates were made to it, or very little, like, shallow updates were made to it. And
just cosmetic.
And if I'm a new family or a young family or a young couple like me and my husband are, I'm telling you, the reason I'm in the house I'm in right now is that the agent for the people who are trying to buy it to rent was so aggressive that she scared away the family. They had already outbid us. I'm serious. They had outbid us. We thought we weren't going to get this house. And the agent for the family came back and said, look, they were very turned off by how aggressive that agent was. And even though your offer is lower, they're willing to accept it. And we got really lucky. but I mean, it's tough. It's really, really hard. And, you add that on, you add the increase of everything else, utilities. So we don't have an option, of who you pick as your energy provider.
Right.
And Georgia
Right.
Power has increased our utilities 4 times.
Yeah.
4
And
times.
isn't that amazing? Because they're supposed to be capped at the amount of profit they're allowed to take
Right. Right.
in a year, and yet you keep getting. And I'm sure the Georgia Power raised your tax because of the nuclear plant that went online that took them years and billions of dollars over.
Yep.
And it's just like ridiculous.
And that's what I say when I say about consequences. So I sit on the Energy, Utility, and Telecoms Committee, and to tell you how this works, and I'm a Georgia Power customer, and it's driving me crazy. And we are trying to figure out a way to allow for more community solar and solar options for homes, so that way we can drive down energy costs. We've seen this work in other states. It's really, really important for us to be able to create some form of competition, because Georgia Power is a legal monopoly, and it's supposed to be held responsible by the Public Service Commission, but they're not really fully doing that right now.
No.
And to your point about like Plant Vogel, everyone's like, oh, we're going to make it 25% clean energy. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at these graphs, and 2% of it is solar. 2%. Yeah. We have farmers who would love to lease out their lands to solar companies and become solar facilities, because what it does, it creates revenue for the farmer to then maintain the rest of their land and not have to sell this land that's been in the family for a long time. But because Georgia Power is not like the only bills they come after are solar bills. It is wild.
Yeah. Well, they're protecting an entity. That's why. And even in some states where they're allowed to put solar and you're allowed to feed it back to the grid and get paid for it, you still have to pay an infrastructure fee, because obviously there's an infrastructure that has to be maintained.
And I told Georgia Power, I said, I completely understand. You guys do, and they do. I like to be fair. They do a very great job of maintaining the infrastructure grid.
Right.
But if you have a monopoly mostly on that grid and you're part of the grid, can we come to a negotiation? And I've asked. I actually got yelled at by the CEO for asking this, because she was like, we came up with the rebate rates already. You don't need to like reopen that can of worms. I was like, but what does that range look like? Can you explain it to me? Can you tell me how many cents on the dollar is required for you to be able to handle more solar and maintain the integrity of the grid? And they don't want to answer that question.
No, they may not have the answer to it even, but they don't care to get it, because if they, like you said, information data is important, right? If you have that information, then you have to make it public. If you don't research that information, but you sort of know the answer, then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So if your bill went up, please email us, especially to my house email. It's ruwa.romman@house.ga.gov, because I do want to see how much people's bills have gone up, and I can actually bring that up during committee hearings and talk about it.
Good. That's excellent. And just to tap one more thing on the private businesses buying property. I mean, the reason that works out for them too, I think, is because there's a tax advantage, right? They get to write off the mortgage, the interest rates and stuff, but they get to amortize the property because it's an investment on their side.
Okay, so nobody knows this. I'm so glad you know this. I actually co-authored a bill on this with Representative Spencer Fry, and nobody would move it. And it was really weird to me, so I'm going to try it again if I'm reelected. But the way that it works is that if, like you said, commercial property degrades over time, so businesses actually get a tax break on that commercial property. Well, they now count homes that actually appreciate in value over time to get that same tax break, right? So they're like double dipping. It's awful. So we wrote a bill, and part of the concern was some people who own small businesses will also own their home under that small business. So we didn't want to go after single family homes. So I actually helped write this part where it said that if you are the business owner and your address is in Georgia, you can be exempt from this. But everybody else, you can no longer get that tax break. Absolutely not.
So that would help to a degree, I can see. Although I can see the other side of that, setting up a Georgia corporation that's a subsidiary of a larger company. I mean, those things
they can't have multiple. So they can't have multiple homes. You can't it was also to take away any multiple home type, whatever the case may be.
Okay. Or a maximum number or something that you can have more than 2 homes or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I mean, that's great, Ruwa.
Yeah.
Very
few people knew about this, and I was like, why don't we
I'm
just
glad.
write a bill? And so we
Yes,
did.
yes. Why not? You could write a bill about it. Yeah, no, and I appreciate you even thinking about that because most
Yeah,
people don't know that.
yeah, yeah,
Um, let's talk a little bit because we got just a little bit more time
yeah.
about voting, right? What that looks like.
Hmm.
You're an incumbent. You're running for re-election. You have opposition from the Republican Party, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, what did you want to say about that?
Yeah, so I've been an organizer way longer than I've been an elected official, in addition to like my professional life. And I really
Which, by the way, what do you do for your professional life?
So I used to be at Deloitte. Now I'm just like a freelance consultant now that I work, now that I'm an elected official. But
Sure.
the thing that I really care about is I really want people to be civically engaged. And that starts with us filling out our entire ballot. Everyone always talks about the presidential. There's so much,
Hmm.
energy and focus on that. But like we talked about at the very beginning, on our ballot is obviously the presidential. We've got our members of Congress. You've got your state senators, state house. You've got your referendums. You've got your
Right.
county commissioners. So our county commissioner is Kirkland Cardin, who's amazing, and he's up for re-election this year. And so please, like, I cannot stress enough, not only voting, but also filling out your entire ballot. We have people who will go vote and they'll leave the rest of their ballot blank.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah.
a big problem. So if you have any questions or you don't know how to, you're not sure about something on your ballot, we're doing a BYOB. So bring your own ballot to our GOTV rally, which is going to be at Shorty Howell Park this Saturday on the 19th. And you can actually vote early in any voting location in Gwinnett because it's early voting. So as long as you're in the county, you can vote anywhere between now and November 1st. And voting locations are open 7 to 7. It's really easy. There's no lines. So highly recommend people go because, and the reason I mentioned this part
Yeah.
is it took me 3 tries to vote in the primary this year. The first time
Really?
we got there just a little too late. The second time I opened my wallet and my ID wasn't with me. I happened to have taken it out like at an appointment or something and forgot to put it back in. So it definitely took 3 times. 3 times is just charm. So I always tell people don't leave it until the last minute. You never know what's going to come up. You never know what's going to happen. If you request an absentee ballot, if you don't get it back and mail it back by the 25th is kind of my arbitrary personal deadline because of just mail delays. Please go vote in person. Just let them know to like, hey, I requested one, either got it or didn't get it. And I would prefer to vote in person and they'll be able to help you vote in person. But please go vote early. It's really easy, really quick. If you have questions or want to go vote with someone, come vote with me on Saturday the 19th at Shorty Howell. We'll have really great food, snacks. It'll be from 1 to 3 and we want to make it fun.
And I think some of the early voting locations are, well, at least near here.
And Shorty
Pickneyville
Howell are the
Shorty
2 in our
Howell.
district.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So Pickneyville Recreation Center?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the one that's on the main Peachtree Industrial, not in the back where the park is.
Correct. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you have absentee ballot also that can, like you said, and those are counted based on when they arrive at the polling place or based on the postmark?
So most people say postmark, but again, I don't want to risk it. And I just tell people, please put it in. Because here's the other thing, you can drop it off. So anywhere that there's a voting location, sorry, not anywhere. During early voting, some of the locations have ballot drop boxes. So you can check that out on the Gwinnett County website.
Pickneyville Park has one. The recreation center has a drop box. Shorty Howell does not.
Yep. So please, that's actually, if you have a ballot and you're able to physically go, please put it in a ballot box by election day. I'm just really worried because there have been a lot of mail delays. There have been a lot of weirdness happening. Even if something is posted, it's not getting where it's supposed to be. So I just don't want to run into an issue where somebody relies on USPS to mail their ballot.
Yes, don't do that.
And it's not even, and it's awful because this is what happens when you defund stuff, right? Suddenly services are worse. And people don't know this. USPS is actually a constitutionally mandated thing. So unlike UPS and FedEx, they're actually required to reach everybody no matter how far they are versus these corporations that can just say, well, we're not going to deliver to you. And so it just makes it all worse. So that's my long story spiel of, if you do absentee, 1, if you run into issues, reach out to us. 2, drop it off. And 3, if you're not able to complete that process by the 25th, please go vote in person.
Okay. Have you seen any, with 300,000 people voted on the first day of early voting, which is a record in the state of Georgia. So apparently, I forget what the breakout was, whether it was like 40-odd% Republican, because you could tell through the data, I think, where the breakouts are, and I don't know, 20-odd% was like independents or stuff.
Yep.
Are you seeing or hearing, I know this is early still, but any issues with voter suppression or anything like that out in the field?
Yeah. So, what I tell people is that we have, over the past decade, have had to build the kind of organizing infrastructure to be able to get around a lot of that. So thankfully, we're at a point now where a lot of people in Georgia know what to expect if they run into any issues. The one that I keep hearing most recently is that people will go on mvp.sos.ga.gov. That is your My Voter page. So mvp.sos.ga.gov. And they will log on and they will see that it'll say their voter status is inactive. And so people have been feeling like, oh, I can't go vote. So if you log on and you see that it says inactive, you can still go vote. That is totally okay. We did have a few people that would try to log in and their entire voter page is gone. Like, it'll give them an error. If that's the case, reach out to us. We can connect you to a hotline that can help you figure that out. So some cases like that, but nothing too crazy.
So does that mean, so if they don't see it online, but I go to a voting place, right? And they find my name in the database because they're connected, they're going to find it. Let's say I'm fine to vote, fine.
Yes.
If for some reason they don't see it there, but I know I voted 2 years ago in a primary or something, and so I should still be in there. Can I request a ballot? I forget what you call that ballot.
Provisional.
Provisional, thank you.
Yeah. So
I could ask for a provisional ballot and vote on that.
So the rule of thumb is, before you get to that stage, very kindly and politely, ask them to either pull up your address. There are different ways to do this, right? They can pull it up by your address. They can pull it up by your driver's license number. And the reason I say that the provisional ballot should be your last resort is that once you submit a provisional ballot, you actually have to physically go to the voter registration location. It's like the headquarters for Gwinnett. And you have to go and show up in person to fix your ballot. So I always tell people, very politely, because this happened to me when I moved back after grad school. The person couldn't find me in the system and she kept insisting I wasn't in there. And so she was able to find me through my address rather than my name. And it worked out. So, first and foremost, try and be very polite about it. They're doing their jobs. And then obviously, as a last resort, yes, go ahead and request a provisional ballot. But be prepared to go down to the registration office to finish out what you need to get finished out for your ballot.
Okay. Can people register to vote still? Or is it too late at this point?
No, the deadline was October 7th.
October 7th, okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So have I left? Is there anything else you would like to talk about before we sign off?
No, like I said, if you run into any issues, voting, finding out where to vote, your absentee ballot, whatever the case may be, feel free to reach out to us. You can, we're on social media, but the best place to do it is to email us at info@ruwa4georgia.com. We are tracking cases and helping constituents vote. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us too about your ballot. You're not sure who to vote for. I'm happy to give you my opinion. I'm very, I try to be very transparent about that. And, just please remember, I remind people that my city council member won his race by 4 votes in a runoff. So even if you think your vote doesn't matter, particularly in a swing state like Georgia, it matters so much. So, take a few minutes, go vote early, make it an event, take your friends and your family. And happy voting.
Great. So on that note, I appreciate you being with me, Ruwa. Thank you. And in fact, you know what? Why don't I get off for a second and then you give us your 1-minute pitch.
Sure.
Even though you just did it a little bit like that, but definitely use this moment to give that pitch and ask for the vote.
Thank you. So my name is Ruwa Romman. I am the Georgia State Representative for House District 97, and I'm running for re-election. I ran because I wanted to put public service back into politics, and I want to keep doing that work. In my first term, I've been able to pass a bill out of the House. It ran out of time, so we're going to keep working on it to designate EMS as an essential service. So I've worked on healthcare issues. I've worked on education issues by fully funding education this year, including the Hope Scholarship. I want to keep working on that. You know, when it comes to just making government work better for all of us, that continues to be my number one priority. And so if I'm reelected, I want to keep doing the work that I have been doing and advocating for you at the Capitol in every way that I can. But thank you for your support originally, and I hope to have it again come by November 5th.
Cool. Thank you for doing that. Hang in there with me for a minute, but everyone else, thank you for being with us. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. If you're listening to this on like Apple or Spotify, leave a review. Love that, because that's an easy way for people to find us then. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, do leave comments if you like, and we'll see if there's any questions you have that we can answer those for you. Otherwise, there'll be links in the show notes on the website. But thank you again. Appreciate everyone joining us.
Thanks,
Take
y'all.
care.